Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of our Hannah sew along. Today we will be adding a pocket if you're choosing to add a pocket. We will also be constructing our placket and installing our zipper. Tomorrow we will be finishing up the construction of our Hannah, and then day 4 will be used to catch up if you need to catch up at all. So first we will start with our pocket. So for our pocket construction, and ignore this is a different fabric than the rest of my video. For some reason my first 2 videos did not turn out, so I had to reshoot this first step of the pocket. Same steps, just different fabric. So you're first going to press in your pocket openings, both sides, a 1/2 inch, and then we will top stitch that. So fold it in. You can use those triangle pieces as a guide. Go ahead and press both sides in. Okay, then you'll take that over to your sewing machine and just top stitch that hem in place. So now that we have top stitched our pocket openings, back over on your ironing pad or board, and we are gonna press the top and the 2 sides in both a 1/2 inch so that it'll be a nice clean finish on our Hannah front. So the top, and then both of these angled sides here. So now that you have your pocket pressed, we're going to grab our Hannah's front pieces and we are going to lay our pocket on centered. So you can do a couple different things. You could find the center of your pocket piece and your Hannah and then match those points. I usually kind of eyeball it to where I think it's pretty close. Remember to tuck those folds under. Okay, and then a lot of times I'll just grab my little ruler here and just check to see how accurate it is, how centered it is. Just want to move it a touch to the left. Okay, so once you have your pocket on and centered, you can either put some Wonder Tape down under where we're going to sew, because those hems we just pressed we're going to sew. So we're going to sew along the top and the 2 sides. So you can use some Wonder Tape to hold it in place. I usually just pin it. So I'm going to go ahead and pin those in place, and then I will take them over to my sewing machine and go ahead and sew the pocket onto our front bodice. Okay, I will sew those on and then I will be right back. So now we should have our pocket piece sewn on, and you can also, if you want, you can baste the pocket along the bottom of the bodice, just so later when you're putting your band on, you only have one piece to worry about, so you don't have to make sure you're catching both pieces. So you can baste along the bottom if you'd like. So now we are going to do our placket. So in your tutorial, you should have a chart with what dimensions to cut your interfacing. So I'm doing a 12-inch zipper, so my interfacing piece is 9.5 by 1 inch. So depending on what zipper size you choose, there'll be a different size piece of interfacing to cut. So you should have that cut. Now on the back of the interfacing, we're going to mark a couple of lines. So first thing we're going to do, I like to use my quilting ruler for this. So we're going to draw a line right down the center. So I measure a 1/2 inch in, and then go ahead and draw my line down the center. Now you also want to mark a 1/2 inch in from one of the short ends. Okay, So that is going to be your interfacing piece for your zipper installation. Now you're also going to need to mark in 1/4 of an inch. So measure 1/4 of an inch in on both sides, just down to that line we drew at the bottom. Same thing for the other side. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and put this on our front bodice piece. So you're going to want to fold your front bodice in half, right sides together, so that we can find the center of our bodice, which is where we're gonna put our interfacing. So I like to just fold it in half and press a line. You could mark a line with a washable pen or marker if you wanted as well. So once you have that center pressed, you're gonna open it up, wrong side facing up, because the interfacing is gonna go on the wrong side. I've made the mistake of putting it on the right side before, so just a note to pay attention. And you're gonna match the center line we drew with that line we pressed. Okay, once that's centered, you just go ahead and press that on. Okay, so and if you haven't drawn your 1/4 inch lines, you can do that now, because those lines we just drew, the 1/4 inch ones, we're going to go to our sewing machine. We're going to sew down one of the 1/4 inch lines across the line we drew at the bottom and back up the 1/4 inch line on the other side. Not the center line, so the second two lines we drew that are 1/4 inch in on each side. So in your tutorial, that picture is marked with a green line. So again, it's the 1/4 inch line down, across the line we drew down there, back up the other side. So you just want to go to your regular sewing machine and stitch that line. So our placket should be sewn on now, down that line that's 1/4 of an inch from the side, across the bottom, and then back up the other line. Now we are going to make a little triangle. So take your ruler again, and from that bottom line we drew, we want to measure 1/2 inch up, and then just mark a little dot on that center line. Okay, so a little dot on the center line, 1/2 inch up, and then use your ruler to draw from that dot down to the corner of the line we drew. Okay, so now we are going to cut our placket so that we can install our zipper. So we're going to cut down the center line and then stop when we get to the dot we drew, and then go over on the diagonal line we drew up to the stitching, but be careful not to go through the stitching. So let me turn this around and grab my scissors. Okay, so we're going to cut the center line. Make sure my bodice is out of the way so we don't cut my bodice. Okay, down that center line. Okay, stopping at the dot we drew. Now from that dot, I'm going to go over into each corner without going through the stitching. Okay, our placket should look like this now, split open with the little triangle piece down at the bottom center. Okay, now we're going to go over to our serger or sewing machine, and we're going to attach our front and back bodice together at the shoulders. So I'll show you here. I'm just going to grab my back bodice piece. We're going to match up the shoulder seams. Go ahead and pin those together. Okay, Once you have those together, go ahead and take them to your sewing machine and do a stretch stitch, or you can sew them together on your serger as well. So we've attached our front and back bodice together at the shoulder seams. Now if you're doing a hood, you're going to have to go ahead and get your hood ready. If you're doing your collar, you don't have to do anything on this part. You can just skip ahead to the next part here. So we have, I'll put it this way so it's the right side up. So we have our hood and our hood lining. You can go ahead and do both of these at the same time. You're just going to stitch the hood together, right sides together, along this top line that curves around your neck. So go ahead and stitch there, either with a stretch stitch on your sewing machine or your serger, and then you can do the same thing for your hood lining, and then we'll be ready to attach that to our bodice. So we have our hood, two sides sewn together. You just need your main hood or collar right now. So my lining is set aside, but I did also sew my lining. Now, if you're doing the collar, your main piece is the skinnier piece. So make sure you don't accidentally grab your liner if you use the same fabric. I speak from experience. Just on my last one, I totally grabbed the liner piece because it was the same fabric, and then I had to cut a bigger piece for my liner. Yeah, so make sure you're grabbing your main piece, so your main hood piece or your main collar piece. And again, the collar piece is a skinnier one. So we are going to find the center back of our back piece, so the neckline of our back bodice. So I just pinned it together at the shoulder seams, and then I like to do a little, just clip it. You can put a pin there if you want. So we need to find that center back, and then we're going to turn our bodice right sides out, and then we're going to put the back up. Okay, so I have my center back here, and I have that little clip marked where the center of the neckline, back neckline is. And I am going to take my hood right sides together, and I'm going to match my hood seam up to that little clip or pin wherever you marked the center back. Now we're going to take our hood and just match it up the edge of the hood to the neckline. Now this is, you're not stretching, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so you're just matching and pinning, and that's going to go right around to our front where our placket is. So we're matching the neckline of the hood to the neckline of our bodice, 1-to-1 ratio, so we're not stretching. Right, so once you've pinned your hood neckline right sides together with your bodice neckline, you're going to take that to your sewing machine or serger and attach that. So we have our hood, our main hood is now attached to our bodice. So we're about ready to install our zipper. Now first, if you'd like, you can use, to stabilize the collar or hood portion, you can add a piece of interfacing here. Now I am going to do that. I'm using a French terry, so it's pretty stable knit, but it still has some drape. So I like to use the interfacing to stabilize it. Now if you're using like a thicker quilted knit, something like that, I usually do not bother interfacing it because it's pretty stable and not a whole lot of drape without it. So if you want, go ahead and just do a 1/2 inch piece of interfacing there. I always have scrap pieces, so I just go ahead and measure and cut. Okay, and then another piece about the same size. And you can just go ahead and press those on just like you did your zipper interfacing. Okay, so now we are ready to install our zipper. Okay, so I have my zipper here and I have unzipped it. And I have the wearer's right side of my placket up and toward me. So I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to place it right sides together with my bodice. And I'm going to match up the zipper with the edge of my placket, so the teeth are going to be toward you. So our top zipper stop should be about 1/4 of an inch below the top. So I'm going to put a pin there, and you can pin it in place. You can use Wonder Tape. That is up to you. So you're not stretching, you're just pinning it. You can clip it. Clips also work pretty well for this step. And then our bottom should match up with the bottom of our triangle. So our bottom zipper stop matches up with the bottom of that triangle. Alright, so once you have that either pinned, clipped, Wonder Taped in place, you're going to fold that over and tuck the bottom of the zipper tape to the wrong side, so that when we flip it over and look at the wrong side, we have our triangle and the bottom of our zipper tape. So we are going to move that pin so I don't run over that, go over to our sewing machine, and we're going to sew right along the bottom of that triangle across our zipper tape to hold that zipper in place. So right up along that line, you maybe just above it since you have the fabric out of the way, but fold that fabric out of the way and get as close to that line, and sew right across your zipper tape there. So you can see here, I have sewed a line straight across the bottom of that triangle through the zipper tape. Now we're going to go ahead and pin the other side. Now I find this easiest to do just kind of folded in half. And go ahead and same thing we did on the first side, we're going to do along this side, matching the raw edge of the zipper tape to the raw edge of our placket. And go ahead and you can pin that, clip it, or use Wonder Tape. Okay, now before we sew our zipper in place, we're going to check and make sure everything is lined up and looks good. If it is not the first time, do not worry about it. That means nothing. I've done so many of these and sometimes it's just not lined up correctly the first time. So that's why we check, so that we can fix it if we need to. So I've flipped it, and we'll go ahead and zip. Okay, and we want to make sure, so mine actually did line up pretty well the first time, so you're going to check that seam where the hood meets the neckline. That's one place you want to check, and then you want to check at the top too. Okay, so that's pretty good. They're a smidge off there, but this is going to be caught in your seam allowance. So you have that 1/4 inch seam allowance at the top. That's why our zipper stop was a little bit before the seam allowance. So I say that looks pretty good. So now I am going to take you over to my sewing machine, and I will take a video of this so you can see how I'm sewing it. And we're going to go ahead and sew our zipper in, and then we will have installed our zipper successfully. Okay, so I have my zipper foot on my sewing machine and my Hannah is right sides out. So I'm going to start with left side looking at it, and I am going to just put my foot up right next to that zipper piece, and I'm just going to sew my zipper in place. So our foot is right next to the teeth. And I'm going to go right from the top down to the bottom. Our zipper starts unzipped. Now I am going to close it up. Again, staying right along the zipper tape. Zipper teeth, excuse me. Okay, so I have one side installed. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So you're sewing it with the bodice right side up. It's kind of flipped here near the bottom. Now if you want, you could switch your zipper foot and again sew from the top. Gotten to my zipper pole, so I am gonna have my needle down and my foot up. It'll be kind of tricky and it usually takes a minute, but I'm gonna reach in there and get my pole down. Okay, so again, our zipper foot is lined up with the teeth. Slowly sewing that in place. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so let's go ahead and zipper up. See how we did. Alright, I'd say that looks pretty good. So our zipper is installed. Congratulations, you finished day 2.